Sup people, Multiplier here, and it's number 9 of Ableton Basics, and it's return tracks today. It's kind of like probably a new concept to people new to producing. They have a similar concept, a similar type of track in other DAWs, but I think they're called different things. They're called like buses, or I don't know, I've got other names in other DAWs, but in Ableton Live they're called return tracks, and I'm going to show you the main use for them really, which is normally for sticking effects on and normally reverb. So I'll show you how it works, and then I'll tell you briefly why you might want to use them. So let's find something we want to stick a reverb on. So literally doesn't matter for the sake of this. What about some drum loop? Why not? Loop. Doing. So you got a loop. Let's turn it down. Cool. All right. Now we want a return track. So create, insert return track. Now, at the moment, you probably can't see any return tracks, and that's because if you see, follow the mouse over here towards the right, we've got S and R. Now, if you don't click them, seeing what's going on with the return tracks is going to be quite difficult. So we've got return track over here. Now, let's stick something on the return track so we can see how it's all working. So effects, let's try a reverb. Let's choose hall. Let's choose concert hall. Oh, nice. So now we got a reverb on this return track. And now basically how we send stuff to that reverb is using these sends knobs. So see, as we click this S, those kind of knobs are appearing and disappearing. Similarly with the reverb track, they're appearing and disappearing. Sometimes once you set up a send and a reverb, you just want to hide it so you can see more. If you want to send like some of this audio to the reverb, you simply turn this knob up. So that sends a bit, that sends a bit more, that sends a bit more, that sends a bit more, and that sends all of it. It's very rare you want to send all of it, but this kind of controls how much you're sending to the reverb. So as I drag this around, you'll hear the sound get more and more reverby as more and more of this reverb has sound coming into it, basically. So pretty cool. Most of the time you end up doing it quite subtly, like maybe leave it here. Which is cool, but the reason people do stick things like reverb on the on the return track is because it means you can control the reverb in a little bit of a better way. So it's a lot easier if you want to say like process the signal before it goes into the reverb. It's a lot easier to do, and then if you want to then process the reverb, it's a lot easier to do it separately. And on top of that, if you've got multiple channels of audio that you want to send to the same space, it just sounds a lot better if you if you've got, say, 3 channels of audio, all of which you want them to sound in the same reverb space. If you send them all to this return track over here, it just sounds a lot better if they all get sent into one set of reverb instead of you adding a reverb to, say, each individual channel, because then they all kind of get a bit confused. So if you're sending multiple stuff to the same space, using a return track is a lot better way of doing it. Also, especially if you have, say, a reverb or an effect on that is kind of really kind of CPU hungry. If you stick it on a return track, you can send lots of stuff there, and it cuts down on your CPU because you only have to do all that processing once. So if you had like 8 or 9 tracks going into a reverb, and your reverb happens to be a really CPU hungry reverb, you stick it on the return track, it'll be 8 times less stress on the CPU. So that's another reason people use other return tracks for effects and stuff. You don't have to use them. There've been lots of tracks that I've never used them at all, and if I've had to use a reverb, I sometimes just stick it on the channel because it's fine to do that. But yeah, I do most of the time find it a lot easier, especially for reverbs, to stick it on the return track. Now you can do other complicated. It's almost like a routing. So you can do lots of other cool stuff with the return track. In general, the basic idea is you have some return tracks. By choosing kind of how much goes through with these knobs here, you can send as much or as little as you want to the return track, and then it appears here, which you can kind of do its own set of processing. So you can do what you want with it. Yeah, the limits are endless. That doesn't make any sense. Boundaries are infinite. Insert some sort of like cliched something or other there. Yeah, that's what return tracks are. But I'd start off using them for reverb. It's the best way to get to grips with them. And then once you're comfortable using them for reverb, using them for other stuff will be easy peasy. So yeah, that's return tracks. Nice and easy. Yeah, and yes, those little buttons are easy to overlook. So if you can't see them for some strange reason, those little S and R buttons, make sure they're clicked, because it's easy to have them turned off and not know why you can't see anything. Similarly, you've got all these kind of other buttons down here. It's easier to, if something's missing, it might not be ticked here. So there's all sorts of stuff to have a look at down there as well if you have some time. I'm going to throw in another quick little tip since this is such a short video. By default, your faders look like this. You can't really see in numerical terms what's going on. You pull it up, you've got the exact numerical value of the fader, which can be useful if you want to, say, move it down by a specific amount. Say move it down a bit to a certain level, you can enter the value. Also, this top one is basically the peak meter, so the loudest peak that's happened on that channel. So it can be useful if, say, you've got loads of tracks going on and you're not sure what peak is where. Useful to have be able to see where it's peaked, to see if anything's doing anything it shouldn't do. So quick little tip just to make this video slightly more informative. But yeah, nice and simple return tracks. To get used to them, it's like a concept that you should be using in your music production. So yeah, a bit multiplier. One more video to go. Oh, move that a bit, and yeah, should be good. Plugins next.